Okay, so obviously this year we've had a massive release from Infinity Ward and Activision and indeed Microsoft with the release of Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And we're going to be covering the game on PlayStation 5 Pro, I think, well, pretty soon. Tom's done a lot of preparatory work on that. But Tom, you also had the chance to go to Poland to visit Infinity Ward's tech hub and to get some visibility on the tech enhancements that have been made to the Infinity Ward engine. And man, I mean, I've done a couple of these visits in the past, and you always come back with your head kind of buzzing with all of this vast amount of information that they impart. But essentially, I think one of the fantastic things about the Call of Duty engine is that every year they're iterating, they're improving, they're adding new features. They still manage to get these games running on a base PlayStation 5 and Xbox One. But this time, you took the trip, and we've got content to come, but come on, tease us with some of the stuff that's in the pipeline there.
Oh, I'll try not to give like everything away. I think that's the challenge with this one. But yeah, as you say, you kind of your head spinning with so much information by the end of the trip because, well, you know, it's. I went to see Infinity Ward Poland and spoke to Michał Drobot, who's their principal rendering engineer. Kind of principally, it was a look at what they were doing with PS5 Pro. I think that was the lead-in, really, just to know, you know, new hardware. You know, it's a good opportunity to catch up, but also a springboard to actually just see, okay, here are some of the engine innovations since we last saw each other. And, you know, I last saw him in Santa Monica, in the Infinity Ward Santa Monica studio for the original Modern Warfare reboot. And that was very illuminating for a number of reasons. They had a lot to show with that sort of reinvention of the series. And again, like, you know, it's iterative at this point, but they keep on pushing this engine. They keep on driving forward the optimizations behind the scenes. And a lot of them, you know, honestly, doing the tech reviews, you get a surface level look at the game, but you never really understand what's going on under the hood. And it does make you appreciate on a whole other level, you know, what lengths these engineers and developers go to make this work. You know, it's not a trivial matter to get a game running at 60 frames per second or even targeting 120 FPS with 120 hertz displays, having it so cross-platform scalable as it is, even going down to Xbox One, as you say. Even though there are mixed results with Black Ops 6, as we found there, but it's still impressive that it's even like feasible and that it's, you know, it's balanced in a way for gameplay's sake to work across platforms online. So as you mentioned, I've done a bit of digging with the Black Ops 6 Pro enhancements, the patch, and there's a lot, you know, there's some cool stuff in there. There's some upgrades. I think I touched on it briefly. There's a push to improve global illumination. There's improved AO, shadows, and reflections as well, with varying degrees, if I'm being honest, of, you know, perceptible difference. But the biggest difference, I think, was in the GI. You can usually see in side-by-side shots flipping between the two. There's a definite like change in the way you know, light hits and the way there's a kind of occlusion around objects now. When light hits something, there's actual shadow and light bounce behind an object. Where on PS5, there'd be light leak, as they call it, around an object. So that's nice to see, but it's sort of the stuff that works best in comparisons when you flip between two images and then you see really actually what the impact is. You know, there's the 60 hertz mode on PS5 Pro, which is now using PSSR, and I think there's a move there to optimize the performance, but also there have been noted downsides, I think, in some quarters of like forums looking at like the visual changes on PS5 Pro, where they've noticed like there's some artifacts introduced with PSSR. And I spoke to Michał Drobot about this. You know, he said, yeah, you know, they've noticed it, and he in fact said he fixed it in half a day. You know, it's But as it stands right now, I think as of publishing this direct, it still stands. It's on patch 1.05. I tested it yesterday as of that latest patch, and it appears as these white dots that appear across. There's kind of like this main base area in Black Ops 6 that you return to, and there's like this kind of a headquarters with all the locations dotted around a map. Kind of you select your mission from that, and you can see these speckled artifacts kind of dotting around the screen, especially when you move. And the reason they're there, it turns out, is that the PSSR technology works as an anti-aliasing method, but not especially well as a denoiser. Whereas their native IW engine anti-aliasing method actually is a good denoiser. It's custom equipped to tackle all the rendering noise that goes along with their VRS, their variable rate shading, their shadows, their SSR. All these components in the pipeline generate some noise in the final buffer that is then cleaned up with the denoiser. PSSR does not really do that very well in its current implementation anyway. So they found a way to fix it, but from speaking to them, it seems like it needs to pass through cert, it needs to pass through QA first, so it'll be coming down the line. But yeah, for now, that's still in place. But yeah, there's a bunch of upgrades in there, which I'm kind of excited to talk about, but beyond that.
Okay, yeah, it sounds interesting. I mean, I guess what we're seeing there with PSSR is yet another example of, if you talk about Infinity Ward's anti-aliasing and upscaling, they've been iterating on that since Infinite Warfare. So you've got basically years of legacy code integrated into that engine that's just been getting better year on year. And so the concepts that, a brand new upscaling and anti-aliasing technology can just be inserted, providing immediately better results, it's not really a given. That's kind of how much time investment is going into these upscaling solutions, not just in the Call of Duty engine, of course, but also in Unreal Engine 5. I think that was the big takeaway we had from Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
But, it was just better to go back to TSR than to use PSSR at this point in time, at least. Epic didn't even integrate PSSR to begin with for Fortnite. Yeah, interesting stuff. So what else is kind of bubbling on in the pipeline there that you can talk about?
There's a talk about how the 60 hertz mode has a cool new feature in the form of VRR support, which is essentially it's an interesting approach to kind of optimizing the frame times. And they have, if you have a VRR display connected while in the 60 hertz mode, it enables you to go above 60 FPS essentially, and there's a read that goes above it. And the approach there is very much like, it's predictive. It's Mikhail explained it. They take the last 50 to 100 frames, and based on the rendering load and how much what they call slop is in the, because obviously it takes 16.7 milliseconds to render each frame in a 60 FPS game, they see how much is actually left over in the last 100 frames, and then work towards pushing out a frame in, say, 12 milliseconds, if it's able to do so, which maximizes the speed at which you can make an input from the controller, and they generate a frame faster. So it's kind of predicting based on previous frames what to do with the next few frames. And yeah, so you can get up to, I did a few tests on it, 70 FPS, 80 FPS in the 60 FPS mode. So that's really cool. There's also improvements with, I'm not sure if this is used very much, but the split screen mode, because of the general improvements in the hardware on Pro, they're very keen to stress, the split screen mode actually works pretty well now. Something I've got to check actually myself, but that is something that's worth looking at. But beyond that, tech improvements generally to the engine, there's just a lot of stuff just going on under the hood. And they really have they they have a kind of torture chamber, as they call it, with every single rendering technique that they use in the engine kind of laid out in this sort of beautiful virtual space, all with these labels across the floor. Like there's one for the volumetric fog, there's the SSR, there's the grass draw systems, there's just everything you can imagine under the sun. And so they had stuff like WGV, weather grade volumes, which basically means that they show this off in the first level of the campaign, but it's a new system that lets you kind of walk into water or snow, and it leaves kind of a mark across the player's body after you've kind of left the puddle. And it uses voxels kind of as a grid of sort of 8x8 voxels in a cube space, which lets them see where on the player's body that water should hit and how long it should persist for. And it's something that I think a lot of players will just completely miss, when they play the game, but it's actually just a new thing that kind of worked its way, and it's a more effective way that they're doing it. Stuff like more advanced glass, you like chip into glass on like multiplayer maps like Skyline, and you can see there's actual definition to where you make the shot, and it actually breaks procedurally down depending on where you shoot. So there's a lot of really subtle stuff, but it takes a lot of thinking to get right, and it's all kind of additive to what they're trying to do with the engine.
Okay, well, I'm going to look forward to that video. Hopefully there'll be some teaser assets that you could include in this little bit as well.
Yeah.
But obviously Call of Duty's massive technology investment there from Activision, and what can I say? I just think it pays off.